Welcome. And now we continue the conversation about Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Myself, Christian Bladt, joined by creator of new content every day, DJ Flobito. Flobo Boyce. Hello,
What's
sir. How
up?
are you?
I thought, is that the Frank intro? Oh, it's me. It's me. Yeah, I'm so glad to be here, man. Is this part two or part three? Part two?
This is the second part of the conversation,
Oh,
and
yeah.
the second and final part. I think I don't want to beat a dead horse. Although, if I did 8 shows, or really, I think it ended up being 6 for Picard. I should actually do more shows for a show that I actually enjoyed. But also with us is Happy Go Jackie himself, Frank Moran. Frank, how are you, sir?
Doing well, doing well. I'm
Oh,
excited
there's a
to talk about stuff I enjoy for once.
little garbled connection wise from Frank,
It
but
sounds like he's like a
Oh, no.
I
remix.
don't know if
Remix.
Frank, if you might want to pop out and come back in. We'll see how that goes. But
Oh,
I'm gonna kick things over to DJ Flobito himself.
Hey.
Start with Flobo. For people who may not remember, Flobo's journey with Star Trek really began with Discovery. So, you've been along for some of the other shows that have come along since, but I assume that you've seen at least some of the original series. As someone who's newer to Star Trek, I
Yeah.
want to start with Flobo. What did
Uh-oh.
you think of Strange New Worlds, the 10 episode season that is now behind us?
Well, I liked it. I like it a lot. I think it was a very cool companion show to Discovery. I'm totally forgetting about Picard being any kind of companion to anything. It reminds me of the mid 2000s Mustang when Ford decided, you know what, we're tired of making new bodies. We're just going to do old bodies look new, and this is what it was. My only concern with Strange New Worlds is because it wasn't Discovery. A lot of older fans, the present company included or excluded, just kind of just glossed over the errors or the shortcomings of the show because it was appealing to the nostalgia thing, which for me had this whole discussion of, well, how can you move forward a franchise if you have to somehow reference what it was specifically and directly? So I enjoyed it. I loved it. Way better than Picard. But to me, it got a really quick green light, a pass from a lot of long-term fans.
I think that that's fair in some regard. I think that I might be a little bit more forgiving, and I think Frank and we might have a few moments where we were maybe nervous throughout the course of it, but ultimately I was very happy with it, happier than I've been in quite a while for especially for any of these streaming Star Trek shows. But Frank. What were your overall thoughts, and were you apprehensive before it started? And how did the show address any apprehensions you may have had?
I would think. Well, I know that we had talked during Picard, and we would just occasionally we'd see a still of Spock and his sideburns, and we would be questioning some of the choices there. And
Correct.
so I felt like going into, we're like, oh man, this is not going to be great, is it? But boy, you had seen it before I did the first episode, and and you were very pleasantly surprised, and I felt myself find the same way. It was great. For my and I've said it many times, the me wanting Trek to constantly keep going forward and not being so obsessed with just telling these stories in the past. Uh, Given the popularity, I think of Pike and Spock in the second season of Discovery, and the idea of like, hey, these seem to have a good resonance with fans. Let's do a series based on these characters. Uh, I'm down with it. I mean, there's certainly, I think the overall thing of, well, how are you going to do a show set in the past that is still going to look, at least on screen, more futuristic than the original series did, and how do you reconcile those two things? And I feel like, I don't know. I feel like that for me, I'm like, I love all the series in that sense, but I can't get held up on the timeline just in the terms of advancing the way that technology and television production have advanced since the original series was on the air. So I'm willing to forego those technological continuity bits and just
Oh,
enjoy.
now you are. Because at AfterBuzz, you're like, oh, there's view screens and holograms. Discovery, fuck.
Well, they tried to explain it away. There's like, yeah, Pike doesn't like those view screens. He likes the old-fashioned way. He
That's
likes
right.
to use radio waves. He uses a microwave. He doesn't want a food replicator. He doesn't want to transport in a fancy way. He wants to get all mixed up and roll the dice as to whether or not you come out. You know, Frank and I, many times when we were at AfterBuzz talking about Discovery, our biggest complaint was, why are they always going backwards? Why do you have to tell these stories where you go backwards? Why can't they go forward? How come we haven't seen anything in the continuity for after Nemesis? I mean, to some extent, the JJ verse, you know, the Kelvin timeline did give us a little bit of a glimpse of an advance, but really we hadn't gone forward. And then we went forward with Picard, and we went way forward with Discovery. All of a sudden, going back doesn't feel so bad. Is that a fair statement, Frank?
I would think so. And I think the one thing that I did enjoy about it is I thought they approached the show as a whole nicely, where it was individual episodes, yet there were bits that would connect throughout the series in the season, so that you could have some little bits of character development that would kind of arc over the course of the season, but you could treat each episode as its own entity. And I thought overall that made for much more enjoyable episodes than the more so heavily serialized nature of Discovery.
Yeah, I think the most recent season of Discovery was my least favorite because it was serialized and it was a story that they could have told in at least 3 fewer episodes. And if you have it less serialized like this, and the episodes do kind of stand by themselves, but it wasn't like a, let's do a sci-fi procedural, you know, let's do, you know, NCIS Star Trek. I'm not on board for that.
That's what this
even
show
though
was.
I guess, even though I guess you would have Scott Bakula in both.
This show is NCIS space. It's specifically NCIS Los Angeles in space.
Well, no, that was Picard was definitely NCIS Los Angeles because they used 2 locations and they, you know, they like drove around the block for a car chase, as I have mentioned in the past. But it did carry through a little bit more. And look, I haven't watched a procedural show in probably 20 years, so maybe they are a little bit less. There is a little bit more carryover from episode to episode now, but I thought it was good to have, you know, especially like the Doctor's daughter in the pattern buffer, which is something we can talk about. I think that I like that there were things that carried over, you know, Spock and T'Pring. There were storylines, but not in the way where it was too much focus on it. I think the individual stories felt consistent with Star Trek, and yes, the original series, but also TNG and Deep Space Nine. You know, I think that they measured up in that respect. And honestly, I don't care about a lot of the other shows after that. But Flobo, did you feel that dealing with this earlier time frame, it did kind of exclude you? I mean, the first episode definitely had references to what happened on Discovery in season 2, and that was a theme that really carried over throughout the season, which I thought. But what do you feel like was maybe the biggest hurdle you needed to overcome to try and enjoy Strange New Worlds, Flobo?
They made a good job with making it. If you watch Strange New Worlds in the Bubble, which I did, they made a good job of giving you a nice on board and understanding these characters. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't feel like I had to do a homework assignment like I did season 2 of Discovery, where they have to have my book out and stop the stream and like look up Memory Alpha to find out who and what is this. But I will say this, a little bit of context for me. Concurrently, while the show is going on, I'm on this show called Starbase 80, where we go back to classic Trek and we're watching those shows too. But then seeing the difference of interpretations, like the Gorn, for example, I thought were a joke, right? But like, no, they're serious now. Okay. And so it was like, those to me was kind of like, do I pull the well actually card and say in TOS it was presented differently, it's a whole different thing? Or do I sit back and go, hey, look, the whole point about having new shows and new stories is to tell new stories? So that was like, as the show went on, was something I had to deal with. Hey, Nurse Chapel is quirky and fun on this show, but she's a total bore and drag on this show. Which one's real?
Yeah. Well, look, in Gene Roddenberry's defense, he did not have the advent of being able to rip off Ridley Scott to tell an aliens-like story, which, by the way, is one of my favorite episodes, despite how derivative it is of another franchise. I thought that was one of the best done. But yeah, I think if you're like, well, we need to present the Gorn the way they look in the original series, we need to have the Romulan vessel look the way it did in the original series, I think you're really handcuffing yourself in a lot of ways. I think it's good to have them be consistent with what's come before, but not be afraid to give us a new interpretation. When I had an earlier conversation with our friend Nikki, my friend Jason, and my friend Mark, we talked about one of the most pleasant surprises for me, and let me know what you think, Frank, was Uhura, because for as long as the character's been around, I felt like I didn't know a ton about her backstory. So I felt like they were able to really explore it. And she is very different in this show, but in the way where I'm like, yeah, but I could still see her growing up, spending some more time in Starfleet, which I thought was a nice angle for the character. So I thought they did a great job really giving us backstory for someone that personally I didn't know that much about. What did you think specifically about Uhura, Frank?
No, I agree. I did enjoy that kind of character arc that they had for her. I don't know if I could buy the way they kind of wrapped up by the end of the season. I felt like, I see where they needed to get to that point. I just don't know if it was done as elegantly as it could have been. But overall, I did like the arc, and I did like the interpretation of the character, and it was nice. I mean, a chance where you can see some older characters and get a chance to get some backstory that you never got a chance to get into on the original series. I mean, we were only so focused on Spock, McCoy, and Kirk in terms of backstory. We rarely got any, other than like Sulu like the fence. Oh, cool. All right, but so we rarely got those glimpses in any of the other kind of main characters. So to have a chance to see it explored in this series was welcome.
Yeah, and Flobo, for you, whether or not they had completely rewritten her backstory, it probably wouldn't have mattered. And just sort of starting with her, but we can kind of move on and expand to other members of the crew, Uhura and Spock. I think that they did a good job for everyone who is pictured for the visual audience, everyone who's the main characters on the show. I think that they gave a decent amount of service time to, and we got some good backstory. A lot less about number one, I think, than the rest, but I think we really got to know some of the others. What did you think about getting to know the crew, Flobo, on Strange New Worlds, which to me is still a complaint about Discovery? The crew members who've been there going on 5 seasons that I still can't remember their name because they get like 3 lines a season.
What? I wish you could. Reese, Bryce, Lieutenant Nielsen. Oh, look,
yeah.
Man.
No, you're reminding me of all of them. I'm like, yeah, that's who I'm talking about.
Before I want to say this about Discovery. Now, people always say that the crew doesn't get their shine. It's about the crew. It's not about the crew. The episode number 1 has a mutiny. It's an insurrection. The whole show is about a number 1, which is why I was disappointed with what number 1 went through in Strange New Worlds. She arguably had the richest backstory about being an augment, but it seemed like she was always secondary or tertiary. It was like another character stepped up that week, as we used to say after Buzz, the ABCD, above and beyond the Call of Duty. And it felt like the first and second in command was always in the background, like a doting mom or something. And I was the most frustrated with her, with Una Chin Riley, but everyone else was pretty great. Like I learned so much about Enars this season just to get up into Hemmer's backstory, and Ortega's has like the best balance to compliment Pike as being like confident in their abilities, but being like homely too. So I was fine, yeah.
And Hammer, I'm glad you mentioned him because he was the character where in the pilot, I'm like, all right, crotchety bones knockoff. Not as well done. I'm kind of tapped out on this guy, and he won me over, which made it worse. That I was like, God damn it, I didn't care about this guy, and now you've made me upset that he's not going to be around anymore. I liked him, and The character who I think they did a good job with, and I said this earlier, and I want to go to you first on this, Frank. How nervous were you when she said her name was Laan Noonien Singh?
You know, it was. I also just don't know if like was there enough gotten out of that we needed to have that last name? Like
Yeah,
because I feel like that opens up more just issues that why would you open yourself up to that? So for me, I was like character was interesting, but give her just a different name because I don't know if there was really anything gained by
right.
that.
What I'll say to that is I usually reserve judgment. I'm like, let's see if they do more with that next season. But although they have her not on the crew at the start of the season, I suspect she'll be back and they'll come up with some workaround. But just in that moment, I'm like, oh god, they're gonna mess everything up. And then I prefer that they actually didn't do anything with it than that they utilize it in a way where I'm like, oh, so what where everybody's going to forget that they got a visit from the Botany Bay already. I thought I
Right.
was really afraid. I'm like, how are they going to use that? Oh, they didn't. I'll take that. Our pal Craig Robinson in the
Craig
chat from across the pond.
Robinson.
I
Hey Frank, where are you?
think
Frank. Hey Frank. Oh, there you are.
he says, I think they did a good job with getting to know the crew in this one, especially with the Pike cooking scenes. I do think that was kind of a nice thing that they added to kind of, really kind of humanize him. They showed this love for actual cooking, which honestly, if you're going to have a scene where he cooks, you might as well have Jim Kirk and Jean-Luc Picard in there because when captains of Star Trek franchises get together, they always cook. So that's something we can maybe look forward to. Maybe Janeway will cook. Janeway, Cisco, and Pike will all get to cook at some point and hopefully not face an adversary, just cook. But legitimately, I thought that it they did a really good job fleshing out a character that, let's be honest, we did not have that much of. I mean, the most we got of him was in Discovery. And I think that this was consistent with that portrayal. And I don't know, I appreciated getting to know him and then sort of these crew get-togethers, which is something that you see a little bit more of, even in TNG, with like the poker games and such. Let's talk about the captain. Let's talk about Pike. What did you think of him, Flobo? Did you feel that it was a logical, as Spock would say, logical carryover from Discovery? Did you feel that this maybe didn't feel like the same character, or did you think they did a good job continuing him?
Absolutely, because not only do we have Pike as a character is weird because it's obviously that Kirk was a recast of Pike in a way. And then you have like the 60 sensibilities versus sensibilities today because Pike can't be going on like he's James Bond and slapping ladies in the behind and telling people they're toots, right? But then you have someone who's confident in their abilities but gets everyone engaged. It is a very small needle to thread without coming off as hokey. And this is the perfect redemption story for Anson Mount. I'm sure, Frank, you saw Inhumans. That was a whole different beast altogether. So it really was a win. And honestly, if the worst people can say about a captain is his hair is big, then you've won because you found a way to hit all of these points from a story standpoint and a character standpoint to breathe new life in the character to the point where we saw Kirk at the end of the season. We're like, I don't know about this guy. Like that to me is awesome.
Yeah, well, you mentioned Kirk, and it is at the end of the season, and we did talk a little bit about it earlier. But Ivan Soto in the chat is asking this exact question: Paul Wesley is Kirk. Did you guys like him? I've got a short answer for that, not particularly. He just didn't feel like the same character. It wasn't the way he was written. I think he was probably written like Jim Kirk. I just didn't feel like they had cast him with an actor. I mean, look, I think Chris Pine was great casting for Jim Kirk. So you can cast that character and do it well. And I think that they came up with a good workaround as to why we were able to see him in one episode, because look, just in case maybe they only made one season, they'll be glad that they got him in there. What did you think of Jim Kirk? I'll ask you first, Flobo.
I thought this Kirk here was fine for the episode. Like if I hadn't seen TOS, I'd have been like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, yeah, this is a cockshort guy who's very smart at what he does, thinks very cerebral in a way, kind of like Pike, but kind of the opposite like Pike. So I can see how they're similar, see what they're different. But you're right, and it's something that I have to come across too when I go back in time and watch old Star Trek. That I'm coming with 2022 sensibilities, but those characters are so wildly different that if I grew up with TOS, I'd be like, not my Kirk Patui. You know, it's an odd thing to see.
Hashtag not my captain. Is that what you're saying?
Right.
What about you, Frank? What did you think of James T. Kirk?
He was, I mean, he was fine. It was one of those where I'm willing to give the little bit more rope to him. And, if we see more of him in season 2 to just see, get him a little bit more screen time, a little bit more writing, and just see if I can kind of see that character start really coming through in the performance. I mean, it's Kirk because I said it was Kirk, but there's room. I thought there was still room for improvement.
Ivan says he'll be a series regular for season 2, which I think if they do like 5 or 6 seasons, you could bring him in. I would rather see him as a recurring, you get him in maybe once or twice a year. I would rather just not see him for a little while. I think that this should be a little bit more of a standalone show, but I understand the desire to have Kirk in there. I think I liked Sam Kirk more than I liked Jim Kirk. Yeah. And I basically just said that for the laugh line. Sam Kirk is all right. I just, I'm in awe of the mustache. That's really what it comes down to.
It's
next
I wish the show wasn't so keen on trying to get to Kirk in this, because we've got 10 years before the accident happens with them. So, I feel like for Pike, so we've got some room to breathe. Give me a season, 3 or 4 before we start really.
That's how I felt about that. But Flobo referenced it, and I wanted to give you a moment to weigh in. There's a friend of mine, Daniel Beck, lives in Japan. He's a semi-regular. Basically, when we do episodes about baseball or Star Trek, he finds his way to the Bladtcast, and then the rest, he's not really down for, which I get it. He really didn't enjoy this take on Nurse Chapel. I found it interesting. She's going to be younger than we're used to seeing her. So it's, again, one of those things. It's sort of like, I guess it's a bit hypocritical. I'm willing to give a little bit of leeway on that character because she's not as well established. I thought it was interesting. Let's put it this way, that their take on them. What did you think of Nurse Chapel, Frank?
That's one of those where, she is like a minor part in the original series, and also written with a very, 60s sensibility for a minor character. So, and Flobo, I thought, is touching on this as well, where you're kind of going back from a 2022 perspective into a show that was originally written and aired in the 60s. I just feel like for minor characters like that, we can't write as to what they were like in the 60s. It's a little bit more staid and a little more boring. And I feel like if you're going to have these characters in the show, I think we owe it to them to get them more fleshed out. And so I'm down for revisiting these characters, and I'm good with adding some more to these characters. I was more interested in what I saw in Nurse Chapel than I saw in the original series.
So what you're saying is you're hoping for Yeoman Rand in season 2.
Yeoman Rand!
Hey, I think take some notes. You want to do something more? Let's do it.
Yeah. No, I'm half joking, but I would definitely like to see that. I think that the new cast that we got, the new characters that we were given, I definitely enjoyed them. We talked a little bit about La'an. Ortegas, I think, is a character that seems like she would fit more in the more modern Star Trek shows, but I don't feel like she's out of place. It just, in terms of like the sort of more laid back, jokey nature. But I think that really helped kind of give us a tone for Pike that maybe I wouldn't have expected. Like if you watch The Cage, you don't really feel like the bridge was that fun. You know what I mean? What were you going to say, Frank?
I feel like with Ortegas, she is like a 2022 character dropped into the show.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Are 60 characters kind of tweaked to make them more well-rounded into 2022.
Yep. That was my hang up. I felt like she just walked off a set. Like, oh,
Yeah,
I was
see,
going to Picard, but this show's way better. Like, can I
so
sit
my
here?
yeah, right. She showed up at the wrong soundstage, and they're like, you know what, just change your outfit.
Yeah. Exactly.
So I agree with that sentiment, but I liked her, so I was like,
Mhm.
it's okay. I think it was a good presence on the bridge, and I don't know. I like we'll spend a little bit of time on the season finale, but I like the way that she really, she stood her ground up to a point. But then, obviously, when people know their rank in the chain of command, I think that that's good. Dr. Mbenga, I think, was an interesting character. I thought I referenced it a few minutes ago. The daughter trapped in the pattern buffer really could have been a storyline that they could have gotten a lot of mileage out of. So, as I said earlier, with the other group that I spoke with, the fantasy fairy tale episode was definitely my least favorite, and also the fact that episode tied up a storyline that I was like, man, they could have gotten a lot of mileage out of this. I think in some ways maybe they really weren't sure if they would get to do more than the one season, but I really felt like, don't stretch it out for 6 years, but they could have taken that beyond 10 episodes, and honestly, it was beyond 7 episodes. So what do you think, Flobo, in terms of that, just from a storytelling standpoint? Are you glad that they got it out of the way? You didn't want them to milk it for too long.
Well, first I want to say that of all the original characters here, my favorite one besides Spock and Kirk is Nurse Chapel. I know that was like 2 characters ago, but I just want to say Nurse Chapel.
No, it's fine. Yeah, I really like her interactions with Spock.
Because it was kind of creepy watching episodes of TOS and the animated series. It was like, why are you upset? This is like a weird fetish. But now watching the relationship, you go, I get it. It's kind of layers, and it was like a professional thing, but you understand each other. It's great. Mbenga was someone that I was trying to figure out the mystery, right? Because he's like the chief medical officer here, but he's not the chief medical officer in TOS. So it's kind of like that weird tragic thing. Like, is he going to die here? Is he demoted here? Is he going to get demoted here? I thought the daughter would be cause of his demotion of keeping her in the pattern buffer. I would say this, as someone who absolutely hates holodeck episodes, I am shocked that fairy tale episode is the least rated episode of Strange New Worlds, because essentially it was a holodeck episode and just went in a whole different direction. I enjoyed it. I love a sniffling Pike. I saw evil Queen Uhura. Okay, girlfriend. Was great. But I'm kind of glad it wrapped up, because you know what? It was a story that had no advance. It was always a beat that was repeated. Hey, Dad, can I stay out? No, you have to go inside. You know what I mean? I think it was almost it was always, we have a cure. No, we don't. And I felt like if something will happen, if something that was going to change, you might as well just wrap it up.
Yeah, I think that I would have liked to have seen the stakes raised a little, in that, like, he wouldn't really be able to take her out for very long, but there would have been some reason why it's like, you can't just leave her in there until you find a cure, even though we know that Scotty stayed in the pattern buffer for 75 years. But I thought that they could have gotten more out of it. It's fine. It didn't ruin the show for me. I just felt like it was a missed opportunity to just sort of tie it up and then send her off, really never to be seen again. Where do you come in on that? Or you look like you had a point, Flobo. Before
I don't have a point. I felt bad for Ivan. He's been asking that question about Prodigy all episode. Are we going to talk about that or no?
I mean, we can.
Okay.
So Ivan asked in the chat, do you guys watch Prodigy, or is it too kiddie? It's not like Young Justice where it's more serious. I watched a pilot, the first 2 parts of Prodigy, and it felt very familiar. And I've said this before. My problem with Prodigy is that I was halfway through it, and they reminded me, they mentioned the Federation. I'm like, oh, right, this is a Star Trek show. I thought it felt like a Star Wars show. Like, I kind of lost myself in it. And I love that we get Kate Mulgrew doing a voice, but I haven't seen beyond that first episode, because it just, I don't know, to me, it didn't feel like Star Trek. And I think, like, Star Wars kind of lends itself better to animated, more kid-friendly fare. It didn't do it for me, but not so much that I would never check it out. Flobo, did you watch Prodigy?
I watched the entire season. It's the only show where I actively do not like. They do a good job, because they do mention like there's a glossary of terms for kids to get them in it. But like, if I was a kid that grew up on Prodigy, any other version of Star Trek could be so different. I'd be like, what the hell? So
Yeah.
to me, it doesn't really serve that purpose. But hey, look, man, CGI rules.
What did you think about it, Frank?
I
Before
mean,
we
I,
circle
I
back.
do have my Prodigy back tat that
Yeah.
Oh wow, okay,
Well,
yeah.
I thought it was a tramp stamp, but it's an actual whole back tat. So
Go
you
back. Man,
actually branched
wow.
out.
Got to
Yeah.
represent, man.
Frank's
Yeah.
a badass.
I've only caught little snippets of it.
Yeah.
I came for the Jason Mantzoukas, and
Yeah.
I keep saying, "Oh, I should check it out. I should check it out," and I never can pull myself to actually.
It's
sit down
like
and
me
watch
with Lower Decks. If I put on Paramount Plus, I'm watching Beavis and Butthead or South Park. I'm not going to the animated Star Trek.
Give it a
there's just-
chance.
at some point I probably will.
You said that
but-
last year. You literally said the same words last year.
Yeah. Well, there's a little bit of a Star Trek drought coming up, so I'm more likely to do it now. But I wanted to kind of give you a chance to talk about it. It doesn't have to be so much that same storyline. Did you feel like there was anything that you felt like was resolved too quickly? Whether it be Dr. Mbenga's story, or was it like, oh boy, they really could have milked a couple years out of this. They gave us Kirk earlier than we possibly needed him. Frank, was there anything that you felt like, oh, this really, we could have gotten more mileage out of this?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I can understand probably why they did it, the whole fairy tale episode, because I think like, there's always that like, hey, let's do the one outlier episode for the season where either they're all in the past and they all have to be cowboys or they're whatever. So it's always great for the cast to be able to do a little something different than just always being on the starship set. So I could see the allure of that, but I also felt like there was still like more mileage to be milked out of that Mbega daughter storyline. And I mean, it's always a tough thing when you have like a plot device like that. How long do you drag it out before you lose viewer interest? And so it's always a tricky thing. So, but I agree with you. I think there was more. Don't let it go on for too long, but I think there was definitely more to be mined out of that than how they kind of truncated it so early in this season.
Yeah, a little interaction in the live chat. Ivan asked, "You guys like Rebecca Romaine?" And Craig actually jumped in. Don't think her character brought much to the show, Ivan. The show ship could have done perfectly fine without her there. And I think that's the fault of sort of what Flobo was saying, that they didn't do enough with her. I'm sorry, what were you going to say, Frank?
Oh yeah, no, I agree. That's with Flobo. She was the one character that I was most interested in seeing, because certainly Pike and Pike has a little bit of action in the cage and stuff, but number one a little bit in the cage, but most of the stuff that I've always seen with number one has been in novels, comics. So I was excited, like, hey, let's dive into more number one. I've always been interested in that character, and I just thought of everybody on this cast here this season, she was the one that was least served, and disappointing. I mean, where they end at the end of the episode, I mean, I guess we'll see maybe more of it in season 2, but
yeah, I mean, that was sort of what I thought, was that, okay, maybe they're saving, season 2 will really focus a lot on her. But, so I agree that she was underutilized in season 1. Perhaps they make up for that in season 2. Let's kind of talk about high points. Flobo, was there an episode or two that stood out for you as this was the best of the season?
Well, first of all, that intro right there quickly became my favorite. I was a Discovery guy. I even like Lower Decks, but that intro really gets you in the mood. I forget the name of the episode. Was it Lift Us Where Suffering Cannot Reach, or something along those lines, with the kids being mind induced? I mean,
Yeah,
that was straight out Twilight Zone.
Yeah, that's episode 6. Lift us where suffering cannot reach. That episode came up a lot, actually, in the earlier conversation. That one really does stand out. And it stood out for you, Flobo?
Oh, absolutely, because it shows the darkness of space. Because look, there's bright colored uniforms. Everything gets kind of ended up in the end. But one thing I like about late period DS9 is that there are issues that you can't solve in 42 minutes, which is the thing I worried about going into this serialized thing. And it basically was a moment where Pike was like, forget it, it's Chinatown, it had to leave. And I was like, thank you. I want stories like that too. Tell me when they lose.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that, I made the point when I was talking about it earlier that there's times where the original series has those moments that you maybe don't get in some of the later series, where it's just like, man, this seems really preventable. This is really tragic. This is sad. Produced by Gene Roddenberry. You know, it's like it's almost like the Twilight Zone sometimes, of the original series, where it's just like, oh man, I didn't expect to get so bummed out. But I mean, that one was just like, you can do, you can do everything right, and it all still goes wrong. And that's what happens in that episode. I thought that was a great story, just sort of dealing with that, that society and sort of how they utilize children. And in true Star Trek fashion, the captain put the strange in Strange New Worlds. So good for him. High five, Pike. What about you, Frank? What was an episode that really stood out for you?
I mean, I felt like the was it Memento Mori? That was an interesting episode. Just I'm always interested in always a good kind of space battle kind of episode. How you kind of when it gets more like submarine-esque in a Star Trek episode. So
oh yeah, Memento Mori was episode 4.
yes,
The unknown malevolent force was that episode. Yeah. I thought that one was good, and I do want to spend some time on the season finale, Equality of Mercy, which I think might be the best, from a production, from a, just from writing, just in all ways. I think that might have been the best one. But for me, the Alien knockoff, episode 9, All Those Who Wander, I felt like they did a good job creating some actual, scares and mystery, but also finally paying off La'an's backstory with the Gorn. I think that was one where they played it just about right, where if that carried into another season and she didn't really confront him, like, all right, yeah, we get it. We know, your story is not that dissimilar than Burnham's, where her parents are getting killed, but I think that, they dealt with it. I think that the baby Gorn were really, really creepy looking. And I think that kind of suspense, that kind of tension, I thought was great. And, it also brought us a new entry in the lore of Star Trek, that not all red shirts wear red shirts. So sometimes the people who get killed just got promoted. That was like, I'm a lieutenant now. I'm like, oh, you're going to die, aren't you?
I thought the pacing of the scene when they're analyzing the one creature in sickbay as he is kind of going into that final transformation for the Gorn to kind of erupt from him. I thought the pacing of that just kind of bugged me. That just like dragged out way too long. And I was like, come on, guys.
I mean, I was like, no, shoot him. No, shoot him. Just it'll be fine. Kill it. Oh, look what you did. It's like you got Gizmo wet, or you fed him after midnight. It was like a real Gremlins moment. But yeah. Go ahead. Sorry, Frank.
Give a shout out for Spock and Mock, just for the Cybok shout out at the end.
Yeah, I did like that they didn't rush Cybok into the episode, and maybe we'll finally get a good Cybok story. As great as Star Trek V: The Final Frontier was, I thought that was a nice reveal that I didn't see coming. The Spock and Muck episode I thought was good. I should have hated it because, like the Vulcans, I don't need hijinks in my Star Trek, but they made it work. And in that episode, I think is also Craig mentions he appreciated Una and La'an doing that bingo thing on the ship. That should have bothered me too, but I was like, that was the most character development we got out of number 1.
Yeah.
So I was okay with it, and the Freaky Friday-ness of it also should have bothered me. And somehow it didn't. Did it bother you, Flobo? Am I the only one who was willing to give that episode a pass?
I think because they made it very clear that the most logical characters were going through it, and we're kind of like, I don't like this at all. This is hijinks. Even before them having, I was already entertained by them trying to do like the romantic getaway to restart the flame kind of thing. Because we all know couples only go on romantic getaways for 2 reasons: to start a relationship or to save one from ending. So I was already on board with how dumb it was. So yeah, it didn't bother me at all. I mean, granted, the story about the T'Pring's prisoner job was the weakest part of that whole tale, but the tale itself is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. What did
and
you
also
think?
in that episode where we get a little bit of Pike, where they're doing that whole negotiation with that other species, and we get to see him kind of have his little. You see why he's the captain of a starship, kind of where he susses out what it takes to get that other culture on board with the Federation.
The reason why I think that the finale of season 1 worked so well was because it really yes, it gave us Jim Kirk in the episode, but we didn't necessarily need him in the episode, if you know what I mean. But he was there. But it showed the importance of him in something that maybe didn't seem so important, at least not in my mind. So episode 10, Quality of Mercy, is the episode, of course, that I'm speaking of, which I thought was a great idea to basically have an alternate timeline version of Balance of Terror and see what happens. And when you don't approach things like the guy who reprogrammed the Kobayashi Maru so that he couldn't lose, the guy who doesn't believe in the no-win situation, I thought that it was nicely done, and there is definitely a degree of fan service in there. There's videos where you can see things side by side from the 2 episodes, the original series episode and this one. Frank, as someone who's had Star Trek in your life as long as I have, what did you think about them deciding, like, let's kind of do a retelling of this episode, but not like the DS9, more tribbles, more troubles? You know, it's not like we're not inserting ourselves in the episode. It was instead, which, by the way, why they didn't call it episode Trials and Tribulations, I don't know. But in any case, what did you think of that episode? And don't worry, Flobo, I kind of know what you think, but I'll ask you after Frank tells me.
I had read online some kind of frustrations where people were having with that episode before I had a chance to see it. But overall, I enjoyed it. I mean, to see older version of Pike rocking the Star Trek 2 Federation.
I knew you were going to like that.
I was like,
it's the best uniform, man. Hands down.
I agree. I love the flap. Like when they've been in combat and the flap is down and there's blood on the white part of the flap, I'm like, yeah, I agree. That is definitely the best uniform.
I did feel like just in terms of some of the storytelling of older Pike and when we were in the future and when we had come back to the past was kind of weird to me. I feel like it wasn't as elegantly shown. I was like, are we back yet? No, we're not back yet. We're still in the future.
I did have that moment. Yeah. I where he was just talking to him. And but then Jim Kirk comes into the room. I'm like, oh, okay, so he hasn't gone back. I actually thought,
exactly.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, what's he doing here? But overall, it was. I guess you needed to have this episode to see what the differences are between Kirk and Pike.
Yeah,
and
to just reconfirm that Kirk is clearly better than Pike, which is what I texted to Flobo, and I'm like, look, here's what happens. Pike starts a never-ending war, and he kills poor Spock a good 20 years before Jim Kirk ever gets a chance to kill him. So he gets another good 20 years under Jim Kirk, and at least in that case, they're able to revive him. But what did you think, Flobo? Had you seen that episode prior to this, Balance of Terror?
I had not seen Balance of Terror. So what had happened was I reviewed that episode of Strange New Worlds, and then on Commander's Log, which airs Thursdays, one of our viewers was like, hey, have you seen Balance of Terror? And I go, no. And it was like, I can't believe you haven't seen Balance of Terror, you brute. Go back and watch it. So I watched it after the fact, and I kind of wish I didn't. The episode stands enough on its own because I all know about Pike and his visions and his Iron Man like visions and doesn't want to be seen as scarred. I like him trying to change the future. All that stuff made sense. But things did seem kind of piled on about how it got to that collapse. It did feel like it was on rails in a way I didn't quite understand. And going back to Balance of Terror, I go, oh, I get it. And it's the worst kind of watching experience or viewing experience because I felt they were out of order. I saw them out of order. It's almost like playing GTA Vice City after seeing Scarface. You know what I mean? It was kind of like, oh, okay, whatever. This is kind of
It's
lame.
more like if you saw Fast Five before Tokyo Drift, and then
oh yeah, you just don't do that. You know, you just don't do that. Because Tokyo Drift has a lot of plot points. Hey, you're making fun of me. No, I'm just saying. So it was fun. It was a fine episode. I think I liked it. I think it was a good way to end the series because he had the future look or Pike storyline or whatever. But it's so rife with TOS references that going back and watching the episode, I'm kind of disappointed that there was a whole layer to the show that I totally missed because I wasn't a fan 50 years ago.
Yeah, which I'm old, but I also wasn't a fan 50 years ago, 40 years ago, perhaps. But,
I will say the one thing that was nice is, you know, in these types of episodes or stories where somebody goes through this and then they come back to their present time and it's like only they know what really happened and they just carry that in themselves. I'm glad that there was that moment between Pike and Spock where, you know, while it's not fully explained in that moment, but we get the idea that Spock realizes that something happened, what happened, and we get their just, you know, how they feel about each other. I like that.
And he's like, I'm not sure what, but I think I owe you a debt of gratitude. I thought that was a nice moment between them. And I do think it was nice to address this idea of you really can't beat your fate. Like you have to just deal with it. You can't, yes, you would be able to prevent it, but it's in the grand scheme of things, you're going to have to go. And so are the handful of people who don't survive the accident to sort of really save the Federation. And, you know, I think that they did a good job with that. I think a lot of those, you know, It's a Wonderful Life sort of like, let's see what happens if, you know, you're somewhere you're not supposed to be or you're not here. I think that it was the perfect note to end the season on. Again, sort of in case it had been the only season they did. But I was then glad that they set up something with number one, which is alluded to in that episode that's like, oh, you don't remember what happened? He's like, no, I don't remember what happened. And then I also, again, I'm like, I guess that's going to be a season 2 thing. And it's like, nope, right at the end of the episode.
And the one other thing too, I like it too, is I feel like it sets up well the menagerie for Spock and his motivations for wanting to help out Pike so much. Where it's like, I mean, you know, they had their service time together, but anything that really enriches and deepens the bond between those two characters, I feel it only helps make what happens in the menagerie all the better.
I asked this question to the other panel that I talked to, but Frank, do you think that the Romulan commander should have been played by the same actor who plays Sarek in Discovery?
Of course,
because Mark Leonard played the Romulan commander in Balance of Terror. I feel like it would have only been consistent.
And now, I mean, Pike. I mean, that's a big thing. We don't know what the Romulans look like. I mean, now Pike knows what they look like years before they're supposed to. Does he? Yeah. Does he? You know? Does he do a sketch? It's like, hey guys, just so you know,
Spock, psst, they look like you. Shh. You know, I did think that they did a nice job putting Ortegas into that episode, giving her sort of the approach of the helmsman in the original episode. You know, sort of no, we have to do this. And, you know, sort of, I thought that they did a good job building her up to that episode where it didn't seem out of character. You know what I mean? I think that sort of putting that angle on it, I think worked nicely. And it was a good end for the show. I mentioned which one was my least favorite. Do you have an out and out least favorite episode of season 1 of Strange New Worlds, Frank?
One before I get to that is like, I still don't understand why in the future that they had to, like, Ortegas had to switch spots. Like, why was she on the other side for that? I don't know. In the future,
you're in the future.
That's yes.
It's like when an Enterprise was like a darker Enterprise. Like, oh, we're in a different timeline. I get it.
There you go. That's the advances in the future technology of the Enterprise. But now we drive on the right now.
Now in the next 7 years, she gets a Barbra Streisand complex, and you can only film her on the other side. So they rebuild the entire set for her. So what was the least favorite for you, Frank?
Sadly, I don't know if I never had a least favorite,
Okay.
which is great.
Yeah.
I'm glad to be able
I'm
to.
pretty sure. Well, for the other reason, Picard would be really hard for me to isolate a least favorite because it's all of them.
Yeah.
No, it's Brent Spiner trying to run him over with a car. That's probably it. But anyway, let's not get bogged down in those kind of details. Let's please not do that. What about you, Flobo? I feel like you've got a. Oh, I know what my least favorite was.
It's actually harder than I thought it would be, but except for the reveal at the end, I was not a fan of the Serene Squall, the pirate episode, only because when with Dr. Aspen turned evil, turned heel, she was just chewing so much scenery. It's like, aha, you guys were so stupid. I was like, oh, come on, stop. I don't believe a word you're saying. Space Pirate seems very Emerald Cheney.
Well, that's what I said earlier. Is that I can't remember who was the green chick, Margot Kidder's niece, on what season? Osira on Discovery, which Frank, you didn't even see. So I was just like, we've had this character already within the last couple years, and they have her carry on now. Where I'm like, wait, we're gonna see her again.
Yeah.
And we're going to have to see her again because they want to do this Cybok story, which that I welcome. By the way, Jason Blair popped in, who was in the earlier conversation. The Brits took over and switched the side of the steering wheel on the Enterprise. I think that's the right answer. And Craig agrees with me. I think the fairy tale episode was my least favorite. Might as well just add Picard with an eye patch. Oh, that's cold.
Deep cut. But the Serene Squall, last point, but the Serene Squall is like you had Pike imprisoned, and he decides to basically work the favor of the crew by cooking for them, and they gave him an apron. Like what? Yeah. What kind of culinary kitchen had aprons for their prisoners? That still takes me off.
They're pirates. They're not savages, Flobo. Okay?
Apparently they're not.
Yeah. So look, I'm excited. I'm glad that there's going to be another season. I would love for them to do more than 10, but if that's where we're at, that's fine. If there's a second, third, fourth season, whatever, it'll all add up in the grand scheme of things. What would you most like to see in, well, I was going to say in season 2, but in subsequent seasons of the show, Flobo? What do you think, you as a newer Star Trek fan, what do you think would make you happy?
I think I want to see more scenes of close quarters combat. Like dogfighting is great, the political stuff is great, Ready Room stuff is a nice little balance, but I actually want to see people go out on the planet and give me some fisticuffs. Give me that give me some of that,
Yeah, I mean, we did get that music, but it was a dream sequence, so it was like, man, Spock's dreams are really scored well. I wish my dreams were scored by Alexander Courage. What about you, Frank? What would you like to see from subsequent seasons of this series?
I mean, I probably want to see, and hopefully, as we talked earlier, we'll get it, but more development in number 1. I've always just had this. Everybody just holds this character, at least within the Star Trek universe, in such high reverence and esteem. So I'm wanting to see like everything that, as cool as I feel like that everybody thinks she is, I want to see that kind of portrayed on screen more. So
yeah,
we get that.
And Jason says, "Damn you, Christian! Stop giving them a pass on 10-episode seasons. Look, Picard was only 8 episodes. It was 10, wasn't it?
It was 10.
I wish it was 8. But you're right. I don't know why Discovery gets more episodes. I'm not going to fight Jason on this. He's not wrong. We should have gotten more of these, but we didn't. And I think that season 2 is also 10 episodes. So maybe maybe Anson Mount's got that big Black Bolt standalone movie coming up from the MCU. Yeah. Frank, have you heard anything? Is there an Inhumans movie coming? The Black Bolt standalone movie that we all need?
I will say one thing is I know that in starships, we've always got just the captain or the cabins are always just kind of more, at least in the original series, very tiny, very cramped. We get a little bit bigger next generation. I was glad that I'm willing to forgo this as a technological aspect. Like, hey, yeah, if we're really in the future and these captains were captaining starships that are going millions of light years from Earth, and they're going to be gone for long stretches, 5 years at a time. Yeah, we got to give them some comfort. So I love the reimagining of like Pike's captain's quarters. Get the fireplace, get all that stuff in there. I was down for it.
No, I definitely agree. I think that I'm okay with that kind of artistic license. Craig Robinson, this comment is cold. Give me more hem. Oh, wait. Yeah, no more hammer.
A
But
prequel to a prequel.
I've heard that the actor's coming back for season 2, but I don't know exactly how.
the actor who played Hammer.
Yeah. So
he's he's probably evil twin with an eye patch. If I had to guess, that's the best. That's the best kind of storytelling. One thing that I would like to see is, as it was sometimes pronounced on the original series, I would like to see some Klingons. And are they going to be the more humanoid Klingons, or is it going to be more like Flobo's favorite, Takuma?
Yes, I want one Takuma.
now, I mean, with Hemmer gone, is that basically just we're opening the door for Scotty to be here? Because I've not.
Well,
heard
I
anything
did
about
like
Scotty
sort
yet.
of the non-pictured Scotty cameo that we had.
Yeah.
I said this with the earlier panel. You can bring Scotty in, you can bring Sulu in, you can bring Chekhov in, not all at once. And we don't need to rush it. That no pun intended, Chekhov. That we don't need to be rushing. Thank you. Oh wait, here it is. Got my bell from my other podcast. I deserved it. But I would like to see some of those characters, but don't, you can bring some other people in first. But I would be surprised if we didn't get Scotty, because now that's where there's an opening. What do you think, Frank? Do you want Scotty, and do you think we're going to get him either way?
I mean, I feel like because I think out of everybody, I think Scotty has been, on the Enterprise longer. I mean, in terms of not like Pike and Spock and all those, but if you're thinking about the original series cast, probably I think he's been on the Enterprise longer than like Kirk and all those people. So having him there earlier is good. I mean, it's a bummer because much like you, I really liked Hemmer, and so it's a shame to see, especially a character like that, wiped out so quickly. Yeah. It's like I rather they get rid of Noonien Singh, get rid of that character. She could have died.
What is wrong with her last name, Frank? Why do you hear your last name so much?
It's Khan from.
Yeah, I know, I get it, because Frank's always had it out for me, because I was like, Star Trek 2, not impressed. He's like, what? What's wrong with you?
Look, Lobo.
Yeah, obviously Star Trek 3 is the good one.
Obviously, yeah. All the odd ones, right?
It's the best. It's the best. Savick is the one that you get in 3, not Kirstie Alley. But what do you think, Flobo? Do you think that we're going to get at least Scotty or maybe some other characters during the course of a second season?
Well, Scotty got the off-camera reference, so I'll be the front runner. But I do think that the one with the most canvas to paint will be Sulu. I mean, that's someone that you can have on the bridge. You can have them not try to fit in, try to get walking them by Uhura. That could be a whole outsider thing. That's an organic way. So that'd be my vote.
As long as he swashbuckles with his shirt off, I'm all in for it. And as long as at some point they give him the line, "Oh my," then I think that they've utilized him. Yeah, I think we'll get more, but they should respect the 5-year mission and have a plan for giving us characters over the next 4 years.
Yeah.
But and Jason, what was that, Frank?
I don't think there was much to be gained by Sam Kirk.
No, I think he was really there to just kind of let me tell you about my brother. Yeah. And I thought that they were going to do more with him. He's still there, so we'll see. Jason says they should introduce Scotty where he has no accent, and then have an episode where an alien makes him think he's Scottish. That sounds like a plot line from your favorite show, Jason, The Orville. That sounds like something that Seth MacFarlane would happily integrate.
Everyone's getting the Pike treatment. I've been disfigured Scottish.
What? Scottish. If it's not Scottish, it's crap. Look, especially coming on the heels of Picard season 2, I hate to beat the drum. I was so happy that this show came along when it did. And it was, it helped me love again. No, but I was able to feel good about Star Trek quickly after feeling really bad about it.
Oh, you felt much like Kirk at the end of Star Trek 6?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And you've given me back my son.
Don't, stupid Dave. Stupid Dave. By the way, I hated how Picard ended. By the way, I just hated it.
But I've
Not the
heard
point there, Joe.
I hated how it started. I hated how it middled. I hated how it ended.
Oh no, it started great. I was there's a ship, there's a whole new dimension. I get it. There's a Q. We love Q, right? And then
But I've seen those tweets from Robert Meyer Burnett, which I'm sure you guys have as well, where he's saying that season 3 is supposed to be just phenomenal.
They have to. And they were saying that in the middle of season 2, which is always a good sign.
Well,
guys, don't leave.
I
Don't
said
leave.
when they dropped the teaser trailer for season 3 in the middle of season 2, and it was early enough where I'm like, why would you possibly do that? And then the other episodes came. I'm like, oh, you had to let us know. Like, yeah, look, we get it. We get it.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So, look, I was excited. The only disappointment, I agree wholeheartedly with Jason Blair that I just wish there was more, and there will be more, but I wish there were more episodes this time around. But it's the beauty of having your streaming service is that you can really decide, let's just make more of them,
Great.
and let's have
So you
fun
can watch
with it.
Lower Decks and catch up on Prodigy. Christian, you have all this time now.
Yeah, as soon as I watch the South Park Streaming Wars, and there's like 4 other shows that I think I want to watch.
Give Lower Decks a chance.
I was hoping that maybe they'd bump up the season order by like 2 episodes, maybe give us 12
of
season 3
of Strange New Worlds. Maybe next year, maybe next season they still can, make it over there. And it's a very specific question for Ivan. It has nothing to do with Star Trek, but he really wants to know, Frank, sorry, this is off topic, but did you keep watching Legends of Tomorrow until the undeserved cancellation?
Undeserved?
Or did you stop seeing Legends when you stopped AfterBuzz?
Undeserved cancellation?
Yeah, undeserved, man. They had
undeserved?
Undeserved. Flo,
Because they had Booster Gold?
Yeah. Come on, Skeets. No, I figured, dude, 3 seasons in, I was done. Like, that show just aimlessly tried to be time cops. It was awful.
Only because
wait, it tried to be Time Cop?
Yes, it was
the Jean-Claude Van Damme masterpiece.
Yeah, with Bebo, the stupid
There's
stuff.
no Ron Silver there to
I
balance
want
it
it.
out. Really
no Ron Silver. I'm out. Forget it.
Yeah. I was excited just to see what having Donald Faison as Booster Gold could have done for a possible next season.
Turk from Scrubs.
Turk,
that's right.
All right, I gotta watch this now. I gotta see. I love Turk.
Watch Lower Decks first.
AKA Murray from Clueless.
Yeah.
So unfortunately,
and Clueless the series.
He only comes in
the
the last episode of the season. So, season 8 was going to be a lot about how Booster Gold would fit into the team, which we'll never get to see now. So
never will get to see, but you never know. Maybe if DC still had their DC Universe streaming service, but HBO Max doesn't seem like they want to take on something like that. Well, that was just for you, Ivan, but now probably Flobo is Ivan's new nemesis because you spoke ill of that show.
I like Booster Gold. That show was 17. And I love The Flash. That show needs to be done too. I'm like, oh my gosh.
They're on like a season 9 of The Flash, right?
And the thing is, like, the budget's already gone. So I was like, hey, where's The Flash this week? Oh, he rolled his ankle. I was like, what?
No, it's like he's so fast you can't see him.
Yeah.
There he goes, Barry.
Yeah.
There he goes. We'll
He's
see
still
him
on
next
vacation this week. Well, come on.
Yeah. Well, anyway, it's always great to catch up with the two of you, and glad we did it at the end of the season. I hopefully for season 2, I'll do a more proper weekly after show. Just my travel schedule got a little crazy at the wrong time. But for someone who does want a weekly dose of Star Trek, I think Flobo might have a suggestion for somewhere they can go.
Oh, yeah, because Lower Decks is amazing. Check out Commander's Log. We just wrapped up our Stranger Worlds coverage, but it usually be every Thursdays at 4 p.m. Pacific alongside John Weber. And if you want to see The Switch, where John Weber teaches me classic Star Trek, the show Starbase 80 is available on Facebook at Starbase 80.
And, of course, at Flobo Boyce. And oh, my gosh, Craig Robinson throwing it in there. Across the pond, promoting new content every week. Honestly, it's every day.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the best AfterBuzz bits.
Look, every week at the minimum, but hopefully every week as well.
Oh, man.
And Flobo, I hope that there's occasion for you to join us on our MLB playoff preview in early October. Let's just hope that that's where that takes us. And Frank Big Hair Pike, where can people go to talk to you?
Well, you can happily go to Happy Go Jackie, Twitter and Instagram. There you go.
Wonderful. And of course, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at ChristianDMZ. Subscribe to the Bladtcast YouTube channel. You'll see a video version for both halves of this episode. Bladtcast $4.99. And that does mean that we have our big 500th episode coming. I don't have a date for you. However, scheduled to appear on our 500th episode is the great Dana Carvey. So please tune in for that.
Whoa, the Master of Disguise? Pistachio Disguise?
Yes. Yeah, not Garth, not Church Lady, Master of Disguise, aka also Clean Slate. That Dana Carvey. And you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at ChristianDMZ. I'll make sure you know when you can find that episode. Thanks to everyone who was part of this conversation in the live chat and on both halves of the panel. Until next time, live long and prosper, and we will see you next time on the Bladtcast.